Perfect.
Well, what does the Offspring have to say about things on their album? We'll find out.
Yeah. I think something like that would be what. Yeah.
Smash. In the opening montage, you heard Self-Esteem, and now you're going to hear Bad Habit.
When I go driving, I stay in my lane. Forgetting cut off, it makes me insane. Open the glove box, reach inside, gonna wreck this fucking ride, 'cause I got a bad habit.
Okay, Matt, where are the stats?
Smash by The Offspring comes in at number 160 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 25 in 1994, number 873 of all time. It is The Offspring's highest-rated album on Best Ever Albums. Guys, 0 for 4 tonight on Rolling Stone. They don't like any of these records on Rolling Stone's list, so it didn't make that. And Offspring ranked number 459 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums.
Okay, 459 in Best Ever Albums, number 1 in Crazy Taxi. April.
Yes, good. Wow, deep catch there, Josh. Yes.
This album came out April 8th, 1994. They formed in Garden Grove, California, which is in northern Orange County, in 1984. Lead vocalist on this album is...
That is a shocking statistic,
I know.
by the way. Yeah.
Oh, I've got some other shocking statistics.
I know it's the case, but it always shocks me that they formed in 1984.
The lead vocalist is Brian Dexter Holland, Kevin Noodles Wasserman on lead guitar and backing vocals, Greg Kay on bass, and Ron Welty on drums. This is their third album, and they have 10 studio albums. Their 11th album, Supercharged, is coming out October 11th of this year.
Ooh.
And their genres...
That's like next week. 2 weeks from now, yeah.
And their genres are punk, skate punk, and pop punk. Influences. Well, Dexter Holland's brother brought him to a True Sons of Liberty band punk rock show, which was a Long Beach band that I'd never heard of. They're also shortened to the acronym TSOL. Social Distortion as well. Those an influential band, but then you have bands like The Adolescents, Agent Orange, The Descendants, The Ramones, Dead Kennedys, Husker Du, Sex Pistols, just The Germs, Black Flag, like all the bands that we talked about.
Influence,
Hardcore,
punk rock.
Yep. Similar artists: Green Day, Bad Religion, Blink-182, Pennywise, NoFX, Coldfinger, Sum 41, Alkaline Trio. Pretty Fly for a White Guy reached 53 on the Hot 100 in 1998, and Americana, the single that album was off of, reached 2 on the Billboard 200.
Is that their highest U.S. charting song? 53.
Yep. On the Hot 100, yeah.
Okay.
I think on the modern rock chart is different. Smash reached number 4 on the Billboard 200. This album.
Wasn't it the highest selling independent album ever?
Yes, it still is the best.
Still is, right? Yeah,
it's the best selling independent label record of all time. It's
because it's Epitaph, right?
Yes, they were the punk label that signed them for.
Sorry to steal your bio, Josh.
It's okay. No worries. No, I appreciate the counter crosstalk. Let's see. They originally were named Manic Subsidal before changing it in 1986. Good call. Noodles' nickname doesn't come from food. It comes from noodling on the guitar, in case you were wondering. Dexter is a licensed pilot and has a PhD in molecular biology. I always remember that fact, too, that he had a PhD.
Didn't they fire a band member because he wouldn't get vaccinated?
Yes,
I remember reading. Yes, okay, yeah.
I read that.
That's why I knew that about him, and I do remember reading that one guy's
like COVID or regular vaccination?
It was one of these
COVID,
I think it was he's like, my doctor says I shouldn't because it might do it, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna fire you if you don't get vaccinated. So it became a big thing, both ways, because this always happens in America. I'm sure European listeners are like, what the fuck? What? Okay, yeah, okay, that's weird, but yeah, we're America.
Epitaph didn't want to sign them at first. They signed with Nemesis Records, which was a smaller label, for their first album, and then Epitaph signed them for their second album, Ignition, after hearing their EP Baghdad. This album was recorded in 20 days in Track Records in North Hollywood, and it was all put together in the studio. There was no work done ahead of time. The success of their single Come Out and Play, being played on K-Rock in LA, the radio station propelled them to kind of break through and to the mainstream. This album has sold over 11 million copies, and that's why it's the best-selling independent label record of all time. And they helped bring punk rock to the mainstream alongside Green Day and Blink-182 and Rancid and some of the other bands of that era. So I think we're all probably familiar with this album. What did you think this time around? Let's start with who are we starting with? Let's start, John.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the pop punk album, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
The skate. I know people like Green Day probably is more popular than them, maybe career wise. Although the Offspring had a big career, but we listened to.
I think
Green Day sold way more than the Offspring.
But you know what I'm saying, like, but the Offspring weren't like some one hit wonder either. They had like 3 or 4 albums that sold a shit ton of albums. So they, it's closer than you think, right, between the two. But yeah, Green Day's probably the biggest selling, and then somebody like Blink-182 maybe might be next. But like, as I listen to this album, I'm like, this is like the perfect pop punk album. Like it's nearly even more so than Dookie or anything, right? It's like it took what Bad Religion, a band I love, but it took like what Bad Religion sound is, and it took a little bit of like the accessibility of what something like Green Day, or even like the strand of punk that was like the Ramones, right? Where there was just a hookiness to it. Mm-hmm. And it kind of was like, okay, we've got all those things, which of course is a sound that's like, for a lot of people in the modern day, when they talk about rock music, they're talking about like pop punk. Like that's something I've realized recently. Like for many millennials and like Gen Z, like rock music is like pop punk. Like that's what it is. Or like vaguely emo, which is fine. I mean, these are genres I like, but it is kind of an interesting thing because in its time, right, this was considered, I'd say, lighter weight music, right? Like, even within the punk community, this was still an independent album, right? So it had credibility, but then of course they sold major label, and much like Green Day, they kind of lost the credibility. But what also became clear listening to this that was not apparent when you're listening to this in 1994 all the time, because my God, like I can remember hearing Come Out and Play like 1,000 times, right? Like on MTV, and it was great, and Self-Esteem, and then you listen to this album, and there's like great deep cuts, like all over this album's just like a walking adrenaline burst the whole time you hear it, and it really is like punk and skate punk and like a pop element, but it's got like a grungy feel to it as well, this album, that the Offspring shed in their future albums, where they're like, we don't need any of that, we'll just lean full in, right, to skate punk and more mainstream accessibility. There's still some edge to this, which I like quite a bit. It's harder, it's more jagged. Their lyrics are kind of funny. It's like a lot of like social issue songs, but I don't know if it's like Dexter's voice or just stuff. It's definitely not like Bad Religion or Fugazi, right? Like singing about social issues. It definitely is like, oh, it's cool that you care about police violence, you know what I mean? Or societal decay, right? But it's, it doesn't come across like something like 21st Century Digital Boy, does, or something like that, right? Or what was it? The Fugazi song that we did, Smallpox Champion, right? That we did in the singles. But yeah, this album, it's like we've talked about, but it's like a confection, right? And I don't mean to minimize it. It's just, you put it on, it's like eternal. It instantly hits with the intro, and it's just one track that just makes me want to like combo bang my head, and it's hard to like even say it's like part headbanger, part like groove, part it's a weird mix of all different things, and that's why it's sold 9 million copies, right? Because it really is like the album of like mainstream punk rock, even more, as crazy it is to say, than something like Blink-182 or Green Day Dookie is. And those are albums I like, but this, I think, is the album, right, that most fully crossed over to the most areas and kind of exploded. I mean, you can make an argument for Dookie, but I think even more so this one. And then also what like the Offspring becomes later, when the the quality of their singles goes down. Why don't you get a job and like Pretty Fly for it's fine if it's your thing, go for it. But most of their best material, if not all of their best material, is housed right here. So it really is like a zeitgeist album. It really is the sound of 1994, like in so many ways. Yeah, I love this album, and I could try to get creative and like if you're one of those people who's like real serious, like I could see you making a counter argument. Like I'm not going to listen to it because it's like whatever, dude. Sometimes music has to be enjoyable, and that's really at the core of it. That's what this album is. It's just a highly enjoyable, highly re-listenable album. So yeah, high level thumbs up on this album.
Yeah, and for someone growing up that was and never has been a punk aficionado or really into like all various forms of punk, this was an easy entry into.
It's got that grunge
genre.
element too that you were used to. It's got that hook.
But more so than anything, it's just the melody, right?
Yeah.
You said all the other stuff, and this is just, to me, this is just slathered in really good melodies, really catchy hooks. Not just in the choruses, in the verses. This is a really good verse album. Like the verses that they have are just as good as the choruses in many cases. And
it's like the Three Little Bears level heavy too. It's not too hot or not too quick. It's just right.
Three Little Pigs, you mean?
Three Little Pigs. Yeah, sorry. But you know what I'm saying? It's like it's the perfect.
Three Bears.
Yeah, it's the perfect amount.
Oh, the Three Bears. Oh, okay. I thought he was doing the green Jello thing. Like
no, I thought it was the Bears, but I was like, all right, if
it is the Bears. I'm sorry, I went to the Pigs. That was my.
But no, you get what I'm saying. Like it's the
just
perfect,
right. Yes,
it's just right.
The Baby Bear.
Yeah.
This is the Baby Bear version of the punk rock, right? But I see what you're saying. Yes, it took me a second, John. Anyway, but I remember I got this because certainly it was. Come Out and Play was the first hit, and I remember like that's pretty good. I went out and I can't remember if the second single came out and then I got this album or I just got this right away. But this was an easy right away. I was like, okay, like I'm hooked in, and it's one of those records too that like. Because sometimes there might be a song or an album that you initially hear and it's kind of like this ear candy.
Yes.
Kind of vibe to it, and it's super catchy and whatever. And then after like a couple of weeks or months or whatever, upon repeated listenings, it loses its fastball, right? And you're just like, it's still good, but it's not like what it was when I first put it on. This album has never, you're right, John, it never has lost its fastball. It's been years since I listened to it, and I put this on, and I'm like, oh my, I have a big smile on my face. I am just, all the endorphins are hitting in my brain when, the music endorphins and stuff. And it's just, I love the production and the sound of the guitar. It's just got a very, it kind of sticks with that kind of sound, but I just love it so much. It's got such a great full guitar sound.
It's funny you say that because the one thing I hate about this album is the production. Like,
oh, really?
It's way too front-loaded with the vocals, and the guitars and the drums get bled into the back so much. And my only
You think the guitars are in the back?
Yes. Like, if you... what I'd say is listen to this album. It's actually very modern production in that this album is so good because it transcends its production, because I don't think the production's very good. But like all the pieces are so good that it transcends the production. But if you go back and listen to how loud Dexter's vocals are mixed compared to the rest of the mix. Now they drop out from time to time, and that's when the guitars shred. But when they're all in the picture together, like I would have loved the mix to be equalized more. But instead, it's not mixed great, and like it would be an even better album if it was mixed equal as opposed to mixed vocals front.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had that reaction, and I didn't have it this week. And I think maybe one of the reasons, if that is in fact, if I would go back and look for it and found it, maybe the reason for that is that I do like Dexter Holland's. I think he's got a great voice. He hits some really high notes, and everything just, I don't know. To me, things blend well together here, and I think that they do the thing in this album too, where they'll start with, kind of like with the Elastic album, that they'll start with like in Gotta Get Away. You start with the drums, and you throw the bass in, and then you throw the guitar, and it's that layering kind of thing at the intro into the song, which yeah, you can just kind of see how it's all put together. So,
Well, can I just
I
add
just
what-
really like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about Gotta Get Away and sing that chorus to yourself and think about all the pieces coming together and think about how you hear his vocals, and then there's that really cool guitar and bass riff in that, and
Yep.
that, that double kick drum, and they're great parts, but if you listen to it, you're like,
Now
oh,
the
shit,
drums
it's
maybe,
really-
but when I hear that part of the song, I am definitely tuned in on the guitar and the bass. That is definitely part of it where my brain goes to, like, picking up on that along with the vocals. Maybe the drums, maybe that doesn't stick out as much.
Yeah,
as
you
the
could
guitars, but-
find them. I just don't like having to search for them that hard and like
Yeah.
having to like push stuff out of the way. That's my only quibble.
Yeah, and that's fine. But like, I mean, for the rest of this album though, it's just, it's got just different parts to it. Like I like the genocide, like the guitar, like the
Yeah, I
high
like
pitched
that.
guitar part that they put in, and it's. Even a song like "What Happened to You," that's kind of like, I'm like, oh, and I'm listening to this, I'm like, of course, that's a ska song, right? And I'm like, but I've always liked that song. It's kind of this goofy, like, and every time they go, hey, I'm going, hey, I'm like dancing along with it too. And it's funny, I'm looking at the track listing now, and probably my least favorite song on this is "Killboy Powerhead," and that's not even their song. That's
That's a
cover of
cover.
the record.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just seeing that, but performed
That's a
originally
damn
by the
cover,
Digits.
isn't it?
The
Oh, the
digits.
Digit, okay, yeah.
The digits, yeah. So I love the song "Smash." I love this, like, just the energy there. I love the breakdown where they do the guitar part and then the dun 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 dun. It's just
But-
it's a fun, really fun, energetic record that just, like this. Talk about an album that you would want to play at the gym or on a run or whatever, something to get you amped up. It's definitely this. And I just remember listening to this all the time in high school and just being like, love this album. And even though it's been a while, coming back to it now, it doesn't lose any of hasn't lost its fastball at all. If there was an eternal jam of an album, it would be this. So, big thumbs up for me. And again, not rewriting anything. It's not probably won't make John's elite status, but in terms of my pantheon of albums that just bring me unabashed, like, total joy, this is up there. This is a great record.
No, and Killboy Powerhead's like what they sounded like on their first album. So, and I like that because I like sort of the hardcore underpinnings. But yeah, this album, I've mentioned it before, there's these albums that as we go through, 50 years of music now, it seems like lots of these, Homo erectus and, these various Homo sapiens, and then you get to like fully formed humans. I feel like this is where like, the Descendants and the Ramones and early skate punk and Pennywise and, all these Bad Religion, right? All these albums are there. And then it's like, here we go. Here's like where like the fully formed human being that is like mainstream punk rock, like comes to, that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I was I didn't know what you guys would think of this album. Part of me, because I really love this album, and I thought you guys might think, oh, it's like overrated or like too simplistic or something.
Hell no.
No, I mean you can't shit on this album. This album's really fucking good.
Yeah, if anything, I feel like it's probably now like underrated in some ways. Like people have forgotten.
It is
about
because
or
of the rest
something.
of their career
Yeah.
is what ended up happening. Yeah.
Yeah, but I agree with you guys. This is like has like some sort of like primal like effect on my brain where I just start like moshing around and like doing air drums and like going crazy and like this is an excellent album to lift to also if you need an album.
That's why I said it's like the white album of like power pop.
Yeah.
Punk pop. Yeah.
I just love I find the opening like kind of vocal thing humorous, but then it like shoots off like a cannon and like never stops with Nitro, and it just kind of grabs your throat and drags you along for the ride in like the best way. I love the kind of like galloping drums throughout, and it just makes me want to like air drum really fast. And I think there's like some great bass lines too, like in Bad Habit, the way that starts out. And it's just the kind of the speed and the energy of this album is really kind of what works for me on this. And
the drums are very metal, like Nawaba metal, by the way. The rest of the stuff isn't, but the drums are.
Yeah, and it all just coheres together in some sort of like fantastic way for me. And I agree with you, Matt. I think his voice is like the perfect kind of like punk rock voice for this for this music, and it's just firing on all cylinders. There is great. I mean, every track is great, but like I like Genocide as like a deep cut. I like Smash a lot, listening to it again this time. But there's really like gems and parts of, if not the whole song, but like parts of every song that are worth bringing. I mean, if you like, that's high praise if you like a ska song that this album.
I love that song.
Album has on you. So, this is just like a seminal, essential, elite album for me. So, it's got the highest praise, and good point that both of you made. It does not get old. Like I always respond to it the same way, no matter how many times I've heard it, which is like very rare.
That's a hard thing to do, I think. Yeah.
So that's just
that's like zeitgeist shit. You know what I mean? Where you just listen to it and you're just like, it just is. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's at the core of my being at this point. So I don't remember listening to this as a kid. Like I would have been 12 when this came out. So I
do.
I definitely feel like Keep 'Em Separated was definitely out there, because I remember hearing, Come Out and Play, which we should say it's got to Keep 'Em Separated for those of you who don't know, as the first line. But it was definitely around. I just don't, it wasn't like an album. I was not really listening to music as a kid, so like it was just whatever was on the radio. But anyway, I love
Josh was kept at a castle.
I was just playing NES and like, I don't know, riding bikes or something, playing football.
I'm also seeing on this on the credits here on Wikipedia, it was produced by Tom Wilson.
Yes.
And
CTS.
Not the Tom Wilson.
He would never have fucking made this
the
level.
punk rock Tom Wilson. Yeah.
And the spoken word at the beginning and end of the record is John Mayer, who I don't think is John Mayer either.
It's not that John Mayer,
because he's like my age, and he would. I don't think his voice is that deep either. But I thought both of those were funny.
Well, Tom Wilson, unfortunately, not a big fan of your production, but everything else about this album, I am a fan of. So. Yeah. All right. Well, we are at the end of the episode right now. Matt, do you want to run through the albums we'll cover in our next full episode? And Josh, do you want to do the singles?
Sure.
All right. So we're going to be covering Mobb Deep from the first time, I think. I don't think I've covered him yet. The Infamous.
Yeah.
His album,
them.
Infamous.
It's a band. Yeah.
Them, my friend.
Group.
Oh, them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Selena. Oh, they're definitely for the first time. Selena. Amor Prohibido. And Oasis with What's the Story, Morning Glory. Definitely covered them. And holy crap, guys, Scott Walker.
The biggest gap.
Coming back from the dead with his album Tilt. These are from 1995. Holy crap. This is not Scott Walker 4. Scott Walker like 29.
14, yeah. I was... When I was looking at what was coming up, I laughed because I imagined something similar to how you just did it right there being your reaction. So fully enjoyed that.
That's like
reaction.
by far the biggest gap in like artists making
in terms of like when we did it with nothing in between and cover. Like we've had some that were, around. Like
Pink Floyd was a pretty big one, but not this. It wasn't this,
Yeah, Pink Floyd. Yeah, and Bob Dylan we'll get in like 97, and we haven't seen him since like 77, I think. But still, yeah.
We also only did one Scott Walker album, so it's pound per pound.
That bio is going to be fantastic whoever gets that. So
the singles are Beck making the first appearance with Loser, Real McCoy with Another Night. Oh man, I remember that song. Shudder to Think with Ex-French T-Shirt, Wet 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 with Love Is All Around, Zayn with Hey Mr. DJ.
Jeanne.
Oh, okay, Jeanne.
Yes.
Hey Mr. DJ. And AZ Yet with Sugar Hill.
That's As Yet, John.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It is AZ, and it's As Yet. So, yep. Mm-hmm. I can tell how familiar you are with many of the tracks this week, so it'll be a nice listen for you this week. Definitely a like heavy R&B next week. So, Any final thoughts, guys, before we sign off?
No, a great way to end 94 with the Offspring album.
Heck yeah, good point.